Hi, friends. I am here with Julia Witmer. You might recognize her name from my review of her book, Ophelia Brown and the Unseen. And we're actually here to talk about her writing process and her upcoming launch of book two in that series, Ophelia Brown and the Mythical Menagerie. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Julia.
Course, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, we have a couple of questions for you here. First, I just kind of want to hear and get a little bit more detail about what does an author who's approaching a release day, what does your day to day look like?
Busy, very
Yeah.
busy. A lot of what I'm doing right now is finalizing the interior design, finalizing all of that. So I put in a lot of hours just making sure that things look pretty and making sure that the edits are all complete and right. I actually got some really good feedback from my beta readers, and it ended up leading into a much bigger edit than I thought I was going to have. So I was like, okay. I guess I'm diving into this. And I made some really big changes. And so that's been taking up some time as well, just making sure those changes work, making sure that there's not a bunch of like grammar edit things that I need to do before release. And then just prepping for things like the book launch party. I have an in-person party that I host. And so I'm prepping for that and I'm keeping up to date on my with my street team, the Pinella Pass Posse. That you are
Which
on.
I am a proud member of.
Yeah. Um, and just trying to keep them updated and let them know that I love and appreciate them and haven't forgotten about them. But yeah, so that's often my days are just like doing all of those little things, keeping up with all those little things, trying not to forget anything. Um, Prepping the book for the launch on July 1st.
Nice, exciting. I do want to touch on something you said about like the edits being more major than you intended. I won't ask you to go into any detail, but I do want to say for any authors or like aspiring authors or new writers who are watching this, that is a very real thing. Like you are going to get feedback back and you're going to think you're going to know how long the edits are going to take, and then you're going to realize, oh, I actually need to make like really big changes. So just be prepared for that. Like sometimes the writing journey, especially if you're, doing your due diligence and involving people in the feedback process, is unpredictable. I think is how I would put it.
Absolutely. But then it's always so worth it because these people can see things that you could never see. You've read the book 4 or 5 times by this point. You can't see the things that they can see. And so that's exactly what I found. I was like, oh, I think they'll probably point out these few things and then I'll need to change them. I'm already planning on doing it and that'll be it. And then they had these just huge, like, really good things to say. Like, here's what's going on well. Here are the things that you started that you haven't quite finished. And like just all of these things. And yeah, the edit ended up being much bigger than I thought. But like you said, it's always worth it. It's always worth it.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of that labor for sure.
Thank you. I hope.
Uh, so I this is just like a very basic question. Where did you get the idea for Ophelia Brown's story? And maybe you could give us, in your words, a little bit more detail about what that story is. I realize I haven't actually introduced the book at all.
No, that's totally fine. So, Ophelia Brown, book one especially, was heavily inspired by these games that I played growing up. I was a very imaginative kid, and so I had this idea in my brain that I was almost fully convinced was real, of these magical creatures that existed that we couldn't see them, heavily inspired by things like the Spiderwick Chronicles and Fablehaven and those kind of things, where it's like there are these creatures in our world, but we just can't see them. And so I was super inspired by that. And I used to play these games with my friends, and we would pretend that we were protecting our church from the oncoming armies and all of these things. And I created this really in-depth lore about all of this. And then I grew up and I was like, well, I have all of this lore right here and I have a lot of passion about it. Let's write it down, you know?
Yeah,
So that's what I did, especially like book one kind of introduces um the world in that way. And this is
yeah.
like about Ophelia finding out about that world and learning to see these things for the first time. And then book two, this is my proof copy. It's a little bit cut off here, so I have to do some fixes, but this is the initial proof copy.
Wow,
I'm so excited.
that
Like,
is amazing.
Book two is about Ophelia the following summer and her friends who find that there are some unseen creatures on the wrong side of the veil. And they
Oh,
are in Pinella Pass, and Ophelia narrowly escapes their attack, and she and her friends decide that they have to do something to keep Pinella Pass safe. So that is what this book is about. Um, and again, it has a lot of those themes of these kids who live in small town Indiana who care about their church and their families and all of these things, and they want to keep their town safe, and they're taking on much more than they probably should at 12 years old. But they take it head on, and yeah, so I'm really excited for people to read more about that.
that sounds amazing. And hey, you heard it here first, guys. That's what book two is about. And them taking on more than they should at 12 years old sounds pretty on theme with I remember that was a pretty big theme in the first book too. That is like very exciting. I do want to go ahead and like just kind of commend you for the world that you were able to create and like the way that you were able to blend the two worlds, like both of which that you know created with your pen. So like Pinella Path is, um, if I recall correctly, is not a real place,
It's
but it's based on
based on a
real
real place,
places.
but it's not a real place.
Okay. Will you capture the like local color and the culture of that area very well, and then you blend it very well with a completely fantastical, culture and land. And I just like I do sometimes like struggle to see like where one like ends and the other begins, but like in a good way. And so yeah, again, if you haven't read Ophelia Brown and the Unseen, you still have time before Ophelia Brown and the Mythical Menagerie comes out. I would highly recommend it. Especially if you have kids, it's definitely a great book for like book reports. It encourages a lot of critical thinking. You actually even have like discussion questions and stuff like that in the back. So I promise I will stop trying to get you to buy the book at some point during this interview, but I definitely would.
I really
Um,
appreciate your enthusiasm and encouragement. I love
yeah, of course.
how encouraging you are about this story because it means so much to me, and to see that someone else like loves it like I do, it means a lot to me. I really appreciate that.
Of course. I'm like, I just can't wait to get like further into it, honestly. So you mentioned Spiderwick Chronicles, Fable Haven, that kind of like idea of like there's a world around us that we can't see. Which honestly, those are some of my favorites growing up too. So I definitely resonate with that. Can you share a little bit more about how those specifically like those comp titles or any others influenced the Ophelia Brown series and like the world you created and the lore and everything?
Yeah, so again, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Spiderwick Chronicles, especially. They were a really big
Mhm.
inspiration for the world. I loved the creature design and just the way that the world was made. I was a huge fan of the movie as well. Like I would watch it over and over and over again. I loved it. So I think
Yeah.
Spiderwick Chronicles especially influenced how I wanted to create these mythical creatures that it's not that they are completely different from what you would think of, but they have some unique character to them. And so I brought my husband, Adam, into the creation of these character designs. The books are illustrated. And so all of the interior illustrations he did, and he did a lot of really cool character design and creation that I just loved being part of and seeing him develop and figure out like what do the goblins look like and what does Grubsy look like? Because Grubsy was just a made up fantasy character. He's not based on a character that you might know. I just created him because he was a character that was reoccurring when I played games growing up. And so I was like,
Yeah.
he has to be there. He has to be there. And so he helped me figure out what he looks like and all of these things. So I think Spiderwick Chronicles and the unique way that they did these creature designs really inspired me because the art in those books is beautiful. I mean, just
Yeah.
and so I really, really took a lot of inspiration from that. And then I also really liked the idea from Spiderwick Chronicles and Fablehaven of following kids who are kind of like involved already, if that makes a sense, if that makes any sense. So with Fablehaven, you're following these two kids who their grandparents are in charge of um, this safe haven basically for magical
Mhm.
creatures. And so they
Yeah.
had a bit of an introduction to it and they had kind of like a family tie to it. In Ophelia Brown, there's not a family tie, but there is a tie with people who are already in town, who already know about this world and are teaching them about this world and about how it works. And so I really loved that idea because I really wanted to dive into the idea of um, mentorship, especially from a kid's perspective, because I think one thing we mentioned earlier, the kids taking on way more than they should. Um,
Yes.
Oftentimes, kids who are 11, 12 years old, they feel overlooked and underappreciated by the adults around them. They feel like they're
Mhm.
being treated like kids, and they are kids, you know what I mean? But they feel like they're
Yeah.
being treated more like kids than they should be. And so I kind of wanted to dive into this idea of these kids having a really good mentor who cares about them genuinely and wants to protect them, and them kind of rebelling against that in a way because they want their own autonomy, but then also finding the balance of that because they're still kids, you know?
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of explore that because there are a lot of stories like Harry Potter where it's like, yeah, there are mentors, but they're kind of throwing the kids into the danger. They're like, here, go jump into danger. You're the chosen one,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm rereading Harry Potter right now. Like, yes.
and it's like, Mama Maisie would not tell the kids to go put themselves in danger because she's a real adult
Right.
who actually cares about them. And she's trying to raise them to understand this world, but she's not trying to throw them into the thick of it. So that was something that
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to explore as well. But
Okay. That, thank you very much for sharing that. That is definitely like, I would say very like perceptive and almost introspective view on the whole thing. And I think what you touched on with um children of that age, kind of like preteen age, sort of feeling underappreciated and overlooked. I think that that kind of perception and awareness and just like visibility for children of that age, is honestly a really important part of writing literature for them. I actually am working on a YA novel, and some of my beta readers were teenagers, like a homeschool co-op group that my mom works with, of the target demographic, and I'm like learning things and like hearing things from their perspective that I wasn't like aware of, because it's really easy, I think, to forget what it was like to be their age once you are no longer their age. But also, being their age in this society that we live in now is a very different experience than even you or I had, with us like being, I think, in like both in our early mid 20s now. And so I really appreciated your heart for kind of like exploring, and like giving visibility to that perspective and element of the experience of kids in this era. That was um, definitely needed, I would say.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Um, oh, that actually transitions really well into our next question. What is a key theme or message you wanted to share with the world through this series? Is there anything that you do differently up until this point if you could go back and do it again? Or is there anything that you want to do differently as the story moves forward?
I think there are a couple big themes. One of the ones is one that I already talked about, that kids deserve respect and dignity as human
Yeah,
beings that are intelligent. I think they're often treated um, not not intentionally poorly by any means, but they're often overlooked. And I think kids are
yeah.
very they know more than we give them credit for, and they're capable of more than we give them credit. They still are
Mhm.
kids, and they should be, raised and shepherded in a way that is appropriate to their age. But in the meantime, we shouldn't look down on them just because they're young, and we should continue to encourage them as they grow, rather than stifling it. Um, and then another topic that I am hoping to kind of touch on throughout this series is just the idea that there is more to the world than what you can see. That there is
Yeah.
more than just what is right at your fingertips. And don't lose the wonder and the imagination and the beauty of the world that God created, just because you're growing up. Um,
Yeah.
so that's something I'm really excited to touch on, especially as the series continues, because each book takes place about a year apart. So by the end of the series, Ophelia will be around 16 years old. And that's right when
Wow.
you're growing up and you're, um,
Yeah.
yeah, like you're deciding as you're stepping into adulthood, what does that look like, right? So I'm hoping to kind of keep that message throughout the series and really emphasize it, especially as the kids get older, that growing up doesn't necessarily mean that everything whimsical and beautiful about the world disappears. So,
Yeah. That is wow. That is a really powerful theme, and I think one that is definitely needed in society at large, but also I think within the church,
mhm.
in the Christian church. I think that because the idea, that like with more age comes more wisdom and knowledge, and I think that that's a good thing, but we do often in like the details of theology and such things lose the wonder, like the childlike wonder and the childlike faith we're supposed to have. And so it's like Ophelia Brown is certainly not just for people within the church, but I do think that that's something like a perspective that the Christian could take away from it as well. And what I, because you said a couple of times that like just because you get older doesn't mean like everything that's wonderful and beautiful about the world disappears. And I think that a really interesting way you do that in book one, or like you um present that theme in book one, and I don't even know if this was intentional, but you have the people who can see the unseen typically be people who are older.
Mm-hmm.
And so like Mama Maisie and the people who are helping the kids, like mentoring the kids into seeing and understanding and the unseen, but then also it's like as they mature, like as the kids are maturing and learning things, then that's when they start to see the unseen. And so I think that that's a really cool way to kind of like invert the idea that like wonder is only for childhood by having the people who have the most connection with the things that are wonderful about the world that they're in be the people who are older and more mature.
I love the way you put that. That was perfect. That was perfect. You get it.
Thank you. I'm glad. I was like, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but you did great.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
love
of
hearing
course.
someone else's mouth. That's amazing.
Um, oh, do you have a favorite scene from book one? And can you tell us a little bit about the process of writing it or what inspired it?
Um, it's so silly because every scene that comes to my mind as like a favorite scene has something to do with Dottie because I love Dottie. She's my favorite. In case you haven't read the book, Dottie is a cow. But she's fantastic in my humble opinion. Um,
Oh,
so
she's great. Yeah.
So I really love any scene where Dottie is present, especially any scene where Ophelia and Jack are kind of sassing off to each other about Dottie. So for instance, I think it's in the first chapter, Jack is on his way to his lesson and Dottie, this cow, that is his, is following him the whole way. And he's trying to go inside and the cow's trying to follow him in. And Ophelia sticks her head out and she's like, come on, Jack, get in here. And he's like, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And they just have a lot of really fun banter that I enjoy and I found very fun to write. Um, and yeah, so I really enjoy anything where Dottie is present. Um, and as far as like deeper scenes go, I honestly can't think of anything because all I'm thinking about is Dottie. I just love Dottie so much. But yeah.
Um, did you so was there a specific like inspiration for Dottie, or like is she related to anything in the real world, or is that just like something that you came up with?
She just happened. I don't even know how she happened. It's like I started writing and I was like, I think Jack has a pet cow. And I was like, that's random, but okay. And then it
I
happened.
love those moments too, though.
Oh, literally, it's the best because it's like, no, this just needs to happen. Um, and it did. And I think it turned out quite nice, because I love her dearly. So
Yes, Dottie is great. I love any scene that she is in.
thank you.
And also, like, I don't want to give too many spoilers for book one for people who haven't read it yet, but she does just kind of show up like when she's needed, which is honestly the best. Like because I think because it's so comical almost to the point of being absurd, how just accessible and persistent the presence of this cow is because she's a cow. Like she's kind of hard to miss and hard to get around, but she still somehow like finds herself in all of the important parts of the book, and it's great.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love yes. She's the most
Yes.
loyal cow you'll ever find.
Yes. That. Yeah. I honestly, I didn't know what I was expecting when I wrote that question, but I'm just so glad that Donnie was okay, accept the answer.
Dottie is always the star of the show.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, those were like the most deep questions that I had. I do have a couple more just kind of like basic questions, and then I want to give you some time to just share anything that you want to talk about. So what is the story behind Ophelia's name? Like, is that a Hamlet callback, or where did that come from?
So actually, Ophelia is a name that I've always really loved, and I especially really like the song Ophelia by the Lumineers. Um, and so yeah, when I was
Yeah, it's a good
when
song.
I was trying to come up with her name, I had a couple of I knew I wanted something that was kind of old-fashioned,
Okay.
and kind of like cottage core, if that makes sense. And
Yeah, I can see it.
yeah, and would like
Yeah,
fit in small town Indiana. And so I had a couple of different options. I can't remember what all they were, but they were all along the same lines. And I just kept coming back to Ophelia. I was like, "Ah, it just feels right. Ophelia, Ophelia." Um, and then eventually, um, I was like, well, I need a last name. If that's going to be the first name, I need a last name that goes with it well. And when I landed on Brown, it was like Ophelia Brown. I was like, oh, that's it. Like it just felt right, you know?
yeah,
So yeah, it had a lot to do with just songs that I'd been listening to on repeat and the genre and the setting of the world. Yeah.
yeah. That makes sense. Being a writer, I think one of the privileges we have is to like attach ourselves to names that we may not necessarily want to name our children, but we could definitely
Ah,
name characters.
yes.
I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and I think the name was Willow or something because I always really like that name. I really like not super feminine, but still female girls' names that are based on nature.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'd like to name a child Willow, I think. And then I stopped and I was like, no, that's a character name. Because I was just like, I don't think my husband is gonna want Willow. He might, but like that's just not one that we've discussed. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that song by the
Mm.
way. Which I do believe that is Hamlet
Mm.
reference. Like because I think in that album they have like Diana and
Ah,
Cleopatra and so a lot of historical references
yeah.
to women. So, last question, just what is your favorite part of the upcoming launch? What are you most enjoying or most looking forward to?
I am so excited for the in-person launch party. I'll be live streaming it, but
That's good.
I'm so excited because I get the chance to like read it out loud, read the first chapter out loud with a bunch of people. And there's gonna be, food and fun and I just really enjoyed it for the first book because it felt like properly celebrating the accomplishment, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
of finishing a book, which is a big deal. Um, and yeah, I'm really excited for the party and the chance to kind of celebrate putting this book out into the world. So,
that's amazing. By the way, for anybody who is reading my facial expressions, I'm not sad that that was her answer. I'm sad that I will not be able to attend. We do not live close enough for me to be able to easily access the in-person party, but as a member of the Pinella Posse, I think will be invited to the virtual one.
yes. Yes. I'm hoping to do so the Pinella Pass Posse will be doing a private one, like just with the Pinella Pass Posse, which I'm so excited for. And then we'll also be live streaming the in-person one, which anyone can attend. But I'm just so excited. I'm so excited about all of the celebrations and getting to see people and just celebrate together. So,
Yes, I'm very excited to celebrate with you.
thank you.
Um, Well, that it does wrap up my questions, but is there anything in particular you wanted to share, say, about your experience or the upcoming launch or the story?
Um, I don't think so. I'm really excited about the book. I'm really excited for people to read it. I am hoping that people will enjoy the themes that lie in there, and the topics that it's tackling. And I just can't wait to hear what people have to say.
Amazing. So, why don't you go ahead and tell my viewers where they can find you elsewhere on the internet and where they can purchase book one or access book one if they want to read that before the upcoming launch.
Absolutely. To find more information about me or about my books, you can go to juliawitmer.com. It has the links to anywhere that you can buy Ophelia Brown and the Unseen. And you can also go ahead and add Ophelia Brown and the Mythical Menagerie as to be read on Goodreads. Um, so yeah, that's how you can find me. juliawitmer.com.
She's also on Instagram at Julia Witmer Author.
I am.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us today. You guys will definitely be hearing a lot from me going forward to the launch. I'm actually going to be an ARC reader, so I'll be able to access the book about a month early. Thank you very much for allowing me that opportunity, Julia. Yeah, you guys know you'll definitely be seeing a review from me after the book comes out. And those will be accessible here on my YouTube channel, but also at Poe.Darcy.Author on Instagram and TikTok. Again, thank you for joining us, Julia. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.